Hey guys, Greg Undead here, making a build video for my Witch Doctor. This is actually the first video I've made for YouTube, but I watch a ton of build videos on all different kinds of classes. I think it's very interesting, one of the more interesting aspects of this game, and I have one here that I was using before patch 1.04, and after the patch it's even more successful. I'm really happy with it, and I thought I would share some of my insights about what I've been doing and the success I've been having. I'm going to take a look at some of my gear and stats here, just kind of lay out the general philosophy of the build, and then take a look at some of the skills as well. And hopefully in a future video I'll be able to upload some gameplay so you guys can see exactly how I use it. If you want to start out looking at some of my stats here, the thing about this build, it's primarily a tanking build, centered around life on hit with Rain of Toads. It's a build that existed well before, quite a long time ago. It's an idea that I got from another build video I saw on YouTube. But since the patch, it's sort of opened up the ways that you can play it. It's made it a lot more balanced, able to mix and match and sort of make up for some of the deficiencies of that old build. The primary stats that you want to be stacking on the gear as often as possible would be intelligence, which is your main stat as a witch doctor. The vitality for life, obviously. All resists on any tanking build. All resists is super important, and the two big ones, particularly for this life on hit tanking build, is going to be life on hit and also life regen. The idea being on the build that you're able to sort of survive a few quick hits and you refill your own life so quickly that you're able to. It's almost as if you never got hit at all. So it's important to note life on hit is pretty hard to come by. If you take a look at the details here, it can really only exist on your weapon and your jewelry, I believe. There are a few legendaries that have it on other armor pieces, but generally speaking, life on hit is only going to exist on your jewelry and your weapon. You can life regen can exist pretty much on every item, including the ones mentioned above. Maybe not the weapon, but almost every piece of armor can have life regen, and I try and get life regen on every single piece of armor that I'm wearing. If you take a look at my stats real quick, DPS is only shown at 13.8, which isn't super high, especially for Inferno, but it's a misleading number because it performs a lot better than that would indicate. If you look here, my block amount, it ranges from 28 to 3700. Block chance is about 31. I have a damage reduction of 61% from my armor, and then my resistances here, you'll see, are all up around 600 to 700, which isn't super high. It could definitely be better, but it's high enough for what I'm doing right now. I have down here, you'll see life per second is up around 1100, which is right about where I want it to be. That's your life regen. So every second I'm regenerating close to 1200 life. Life per hit I have down here at 648. That's pretty good. Probably end game type of goal for this build would be to have it near like 850. Even closer to 1,000, the better. And then I have a little bit of lifesteal at 3% here. Difference between life on hit and lifesteal is obviously the life on hit is a flat number that doesn't change. Lifesteal scales with the amount of damage that you're doing to enemies. So higher DPS skills, lifesteal is going to be more important. Lower DPS skills or later in Inferno, the life on hit's more important because it's a guaranteed number. One of the interesting things about this build that really makes it super cheap to gear is that a lot of the stats that you're looking for, the life on hit, the life regen, they're sort of lesser importance to a lot of the other classes and a lot of the other builds. A lot of builds out there are really looking to stack attack speed, critical hit damage and chance, magic find, things like that. Obviously you still want magic find on this build, but you can kind of buy a lot of items super affordably because they're like lesser wizard items. They're items that a wizard would look at and be like, oh, if that didn't have life regen and it had crit chance instead, I'd use it better. You know, attack speed is another stat that's really not important to use. Two pieces that I will sort of point out is my dagger, which I got pretty early, like when the character was like level 10. I found it on the auction house. I bought it for about 500,000. It's extremely affordable, but it's one of the better ones I've seen for it. It does a pretty good amount of intelligence. It does over 265 life on hit. It does the 3% lifesteal. This is where I have my lifesteal, and it also does a plague of toads damage increased by 5%, which is very important. And I don't believe that it shows up in the DPS calculation. So even though that says 13.8, you're getting an extra 5 to 600 DPS just from that 5%. Extra damage to Plague of Toads. The other really important piece right now is I have a Storm Shield. I actually got kind of lucky. I had a friend who found this, and they were really only using it for their followers, so he pretty much let me borrow it until I can replace it. You don't have to have a shield this good. The key things you want to look for is you want to have a block chance about 30% or north of 30% if you can get it as close, as close or above 30 as you can get. You also want to have a block amount at 3,000 or above. So this one ranges from 2,800 to about 4,000, 3,700. You can get them a little bit higher. It has some resists on it. It also has reduced damage from melee and reduced damage from elites. It helps, but it's not super important. The big thing is the block chance. You want to be around 30% or better. And the block amount, you want to be upwards of 3,000. A lot of people on a build like this, would like to stack block percent with like a Helm of Command or a Justice Lantern. You can do that, although I don't think it's super important, and you can definitely spend the money on a better on a couple other pieces of gear that are going to be more important to you. That's pretty much it for the items. I'm going to get into the skills real quick. If you look at my skills, we'll start with the passives. You have Vision Quest. This has been drastically changed in 1.04. Now it does 30% mana reduction, or 30% increased mana regen after you attack with Plague of Toads. So this basically fills up your mana as soon as you use it. Jungle Fortitude reduces all damage taken for you and your team and your pets by 20%, so it's 20% damage mitigation right there. And then Bad Medicine gives you 20% more damage mitigation for 3 seconds after they're poisoned. And since you're pretty much casting Plague of Toads constantly, that's almost all the time. So you have right here between these two skills 40% damage mitigation, which is more than a barb or a monk would have naturally. So that's really important to the build. Your primary skill, like I said, is Plague of Toads with the Reign of Toads rune. This skill just hits really frequently. It hits very consistently and often. It also casts very fast. Since the patch, they updated the casting animation. This is the core of your build. It delivers constant DPS. It also keeps you healed almost all the time. For secondary here, you want to throw on some kind of dot damage over time. I use Grasp of the Dead with the Rain of Corpses. Gives you a little bit of crowd control with the slowing. It also, the Rain of Corpses will hit enemies outside of the circle. So you'll see when you use it, you'll see corpses fall on maybe enemies that are sort of staying on the perimeter and using ranged attacks. It'll take care of them for you. On my action bar, number 1, I use Spirit Walk. This is just sort of a bailout skill. I use Umbral Shock, which damages enemies when you come out of Spirit Walk. You can pretty much use any one of these runes. It really doesn't matter. You're basically using Spirit Walk to bail out a bad situation should you encounter a group of enemies that is just overpowering your life regeneration. And then on my second spot, I use Soul Harvest. If you don't know about Soul Harvest, it's probably the best skill that Witch Doctors have. It gives you an extra, at level 60, it gives you an extra 130 intelligence for every enemy you hit with it, up to 5 times. So you're talking about another 650 intelligence, which boosts not only your damage output, but also your your resistances and your overall damage mitigation, you'll actually see my DPS jump up to about 16 to 18,000 when I have that in full effect. And you can use any one of these runes here. They give you, life or mana back, or some will even damage enemies. I use Soul to Waste because it lasts for 60 seconds. Reason being, if you come across a big group of enemies, you can get a 5-stack, and then you don't have to worry about replacing it. If you run into like a harder elite or a monster that takes longer to kill, it won't run out, and you won't be replacing it with a 1-stack or a 2-stack. Once you get a good 5-stack, you can roll with it for up to a minute, which usually allows you to keep 5-stack almost all the time. Third skill here, this is where I put just my big DPS skill. One of the struggles of this build definitely has been DPS. But this zombie charger with zombie bears obviously is the most effective, strongest DPS that the Witch Doctor tends to have. Before the patch, a lot of people were actually making builds where they pretty much spammed zombie charger all the time. You definitely don't need to do that. It's overkill for sure. I use Plaguetoads, and then I just pepper this in every couple seconds, give my mana a chance to catch back up. It refills pretty quick, and then just throw it out there every couple seconds. It does a lot of damage. I also would sometimes replace this with a Spirit Barrage with the Manitou rune. That basically just makes this thing that hovers over your head. I'll show you really quick. It has no cooldown time, which is really nice, and it just kind of attacks everything nearby you. I find that if you're fighting bosses, particularly Belial, it really helps because it just every one of those attack hits it. It does 1600 plus percent of your weapon damage over 20 seconds. And you kind of can set it and forget it, and it has no cooldown time, so you can kind of cast it in the middle of Plaguetoads, and you don't really even notice that it's happening. And then lastly, on my fourth skill spot, I use a pet. This was something that was sort of irrelevant previously in the before the patch, but they really updated them a lot. We basically, what happens now is the dogs have a much more survivability, and they also inherit some of your survivability. So on a tanking build where I have tons of defense and resistances, life regen, things like that, the dogs pick up a percentage of that, which really increases their survivability. It's also important to note that I use rabid dogs. That's one of the earlier runes you get, simply because they do poison damage. And if you go back to my passive here of bad medicine, when they're damaging enemies with poison, they're mitigating their damage output by 20%. So the dogs, make no mistake, are not really there for offense whatsoever. They're basically an extension of your shield. They just sort of gum up hallways, distract enemies, sort of keep every enemy on screen from attacking you all at once all the time. They will die fairly often, but the recharge time is not super long at 45 seconds, and they definitely live longer than 45 seconds in almost all elite encounters. So that is pretty much it. I know this video is running kind of long, but that's the build. I hope to post a video pretty soon of some combat. For me right now with this gear, it's I'm all going through Act 3 on Inferno and not really having any problems whatsoever. Slowly but surely adding Magic Find to that as I find better items. And with the new Paragon system, I'm also earning intelligence, which is helping my damage and my survivability with every Paragon level that I pick up. So yeah, in summary, it's a really effective, kill stuff good. You can survive almost everything in Inferno. It's very cheap to gear. I mean, I have bought everything here on the auction house, and no item cost me more than the 500,000 that I paid for the knife. It's very successful with lots of room for improvement. So as I continue to find better gear, it's only going to get better. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope it helped some of you with your doctor builds. Maybe inspired some of you to create a doctor like I have. And enjoy. Have fun with it. Thanks, guys.